Good evening, everyone. I'm Wendall Jones, and welcome to this edition of the program, The Platform. On this program, we look at the national issues of the Bahamas. And on our program today, we are going to talk a little bit about our courts and the extent to which they are backlogged in not only in criminal cases, but in civil cases as well. Our people would remember the feud going on between Louis Bacon and Peter Nygaard. And there are a number of judicial reviews before the courts as we speak. In addition to that, a matter was referred to from New York, where those two billionaires were involved in a litigation. And on our program today, we have activist Mr. Vivian Whylly, who is here today to talk about these and other things. Vivian Whylly, it's good to see you.
Good night, Wendell, and good night, Bahamas.
It's nice to have you here again. You've been missing for a little while. You're doing well now. I know that you had some challenges.
Yes. I have a bit more to go, but I've come a long way.
Very good, very good. It says that you are a descendant of slaves from the Whylly plantation. And you know, every time you come on the show, you talk about what's happening at Clifton. Clifton is very near and dear to you, isn't it?
Yes. When I am no longer breathing in this body, I would like my bones to be interred at Clifton so that I can be joined with my ancestors and be one with them, because they are the reason behind me staying in the forefront of all that is happening at Clifton.
You have a spot at Clifton for your body to be interred?
No, but anywhere close to those houses would be fine with me as a part of a tourist attraction or whatever. I actually thought that Clifton Heritage Park would be a perfect place for a National Heroes Park, where each of our national heroes could have a bench and something out there with a statue or a bust of them and what they did.
Have you advanced that idea?
I have spoken to some people, but Wendell, just to take it on a little off tangent, from the time that I challenged the Clifton Key developers to now, the government has marginalized me as a quote-unquote problem. Both governments, because when they were doing the board at Clifton, they brought in all the political activists. But they say that I'm an activist, but I'm a realist. I am the real descendant of the people of Clifton. I don't have to activate anything. That is who I am in my blood.
Mm. And your relationship with the people some people who live at Lyford Key is as a result of your activism with Clifton, isn't it?
Yes. Louis Bacon and a group of Lyford Key property owners actually came to me, and they offered to help me with my litigation against the Clifton Key developers at that time. We were known as the Coalition to Save Clifton, but I was particularly isolated to attend meetings and dinner parties, and Robert Kennedy was brought on board to represent me in an international forum as a descendant of these slaves. Notwithstanding that, when the fight was complete and it became a park, these are the same persons that I put a business plan together, and they said that they did not really want to deal with the issue of slavery. They were just more interested in having the development stop because of the environmental damage it would do. I later found out, as I said in your previous show, that Louis Bacon's relatives had a slave plantation that had slaves reproduce slaves so that they can sell them.
You got this information?
It's called the Orton Plantation, and the information is right on Google.
Mm-hmm. You, having spent a lot of time dealing with the Clifton matter, one would have thought that you would be a member of Save the Bays.
Save the Bays is,
Didn't it come out as a result of what was taking place at Clifton and
no, Save the Bays
Key?
came about as a result of their desire to have Peter Nygaard removed from the Lightfoot Key area, because they came up with a whole list of things that Nygaard Key was causing, environmental damage and all the rest of that. But I want the general public to understand that Save the Bays is not, in my estimation, an environmental group. The bays, the Clifton Bay, had already been saved. There was nothing wrong with Nygaard and his place. And they said that Nygaard's beach was causing the sand from George Beach not to stay on the beach. But again, in June of this year, they had the dredge. December of last year, every 6 months, they have to dredge the canal that abuts George Beach. What is new about me coming on is that I want to tell the public that while I was working to get the park preserved, these persons had asked me on numerous occasions to find girls who Mr. Nygaard had abused and all the rest of that, and would be willing to testify. They wanted me to actually be along with them and help the public to fight against Peter Nygaard. And this was before they told me no to the business proposal. It seems to me that in light of what has happened, Save the Bays will go to any extent to defame Peter Nygaard.
Why didn't you join Save the Bays?
By that time, I knew Louis Bacon was not, he didn't like blacks. I found that out the hard way.
But aren't some black people members of Save the Bays?
They are employees of Save the Bays, and for whatever reason they might be members, but they're being misled by the thought of them being in, you know, money is one of their motivating forces. Save the Bays has a record, to me, of being put together to change the course of politics in the Bahamas. That's why I didn't join.
You think it's a political organization?
Yes.
Well, I think one of the directors admitted as much. But you know that there are a number of judicial reviews before the court. The court has been asked to look at the government's performance and decisions with respect to Nygaard Key. And I believe that these were brought about through the Save the Bays organization.
Yes. Save the Bays used the cover of an environmental organization to make a case. What they have done is they've hired a very competent attorney who has knowledge of how to manipulate the courts. And they have hired some environmental people who knows the language that the court will adhere to in environmental law. And they put together a case and they named it Peter Nygaard Key. But the information that they put together was false. They didn't have no basis for the information, and also the intent, why they were doing it wasn't because of the environment. They were doing it because Peter Nygaard was not a member of the Lightfoot Key Club. Peter Nygaard's property wasn't officially in Nygaard Key. Peter Nygaard had to fill in a piece of waterway to extend from where Louis Bacon's house is into his driveway, which was allowed by law. At the same time, Louis Bacon was allowed to dredge a canal and a tunnel basically under his house where a boat could come in day or night and disappear into his house where it was raised up and whatever the contents were.
You say at the same time. This happened sometime before.
Well, Bacon's house happened before, yeah. But I was using that as a figure of speech, while knowing would be better that they had already dug into the bedrock of the land to make this channel. They were complaining that Nygaard was dredging a canal for himself, removing the sand, and everything that he did was wrong, while everything they did was right.
So you were saying that the organization itself was being a little duplicitous.
Yeah, it's a hoax, it's a phony. Save the Bays reminds me of Donald Trump.
How?
Donald Trump believes he's right, no matter what. He says the most horrendous, hurtful things about people, with or without children, and expects everybody to go along with it. He is now trying to get people to come along with him and fight Mexicans and fight Muslims, and ultimately he's on the side of the police, so he's saying, you know, you could shoot a black guy, we'll just give you time off. That's my estimation of who he is. And I see the same thing in Save the Bays. We know the environment, we know how to protect it, you do what we say and all will be well. The bully, the gunboat, diplomacy, that's what I see. Save the Bays is a super PAC. They have put the courts in backlog with the amount of cases that they've filed. The people in New York had the right idea. Save the Bays filed a lawsuit.
Was it Save the Bays who filed this lawsuit in New York? Or?
Louis Bacon, sorry. Sorry, good correction. Louis Bacon filed a lawsuit against Peter Nygaard in New York with 135 allegations of libel and slander. After a year, the court sat and they said, you know what? They threw out 100 of the allegations, 100. Less than a year later, they said, you know what? After reviewing this, all of these things are alleged to have happened in the Bahamas. The players are in the Bahamas. Everything is there. This is not where this case should be heard. They have enough money to waste people's time in New York, but New York don't let nobody waste their time. They go straight to it, they rule on it, and that's it. In the Bahamas, we're going around in a circle. They're putting so many lawsuits. Louis Bacon is putting so much lawsuits. He put a lawsuit against the prime minister, the deputy prime minister. He put a lawsuit against the attorney general. He put a lawsuit against the police commissioner. He put a lawsuit against Peter Nygaard, but he never put a lawsuit against me.
Perhaps you haven't said anything that is defamatory.
Perhaps I know he is lying. I put that is because I was there when they had these plenary meetings on how they're going to approach getting Peter Nygaard out of Lightfoot Key. And that was the meaning of what they were doing. Okay, you have people who have played Louis Bacon as a guy who should be afraid of his life. Louis Bacon is a billionaire. A billionaire. Why should he be afraid for his life? He can hire bodyguards.
Let's back up. You talk about being there. You actually met Mr. Bacon, right?
Mr. Bacon met Mr. Whyley because I think he needed something from me at that time.
So he invited you to
Yes.
his house.
Yes.
So you're one of the few Bahamians who.
I've actually sat and
Yes.
talked with this gentleman.
Yes. Okay. And he wanted you to do certain things with respect to the.
He wanted
Clifton
information, number one, and he wanted action, number two. He wanted information on what I knew about NIGAD and how I could help him go out and look for women to make these allegations against Peter NIGAD. Actually, that is how they do it. They come to you. Mr. Jones, I don't want to make this so trivial, but if he didn't have a plan to use me, I had no reason to go to his house.
I just want to warn you up front, right, that Mr. Bacon has long dollars, and he takes people to court all the time.
I dare Louis Bacon to take. I dare him.
But he wouldn't take you. He'd take me. See, he'd take me to court. And so I want you to be extremely careful on this show because I do not know Mr. Bacon. I've never met him. I have nothing against him, but he happens to be an individual who is always in the news, and as someone who is always dealing in news and journalism, we have to address certain matters. And so I have to be very careful, and I want people who come on this show to be extremely careful, not to slander the man, because we do not like going to court. We do not like paying lawyers to go to court to defend us against these trivial matters, you know? So I want you to be very careful as we continue our conversation.
Okay.
Okay? Let's take a break here. This is The Platform. We take this break and we'll come right back.